Hi, this is episode 26 of the second year of trying to achieve double bodyweight squatting. What will be 44 at the moment. So, yeah, quite old in years for trying to achieve something like as silly as squatting double bodyweight. Been a period of good, consistent training and steady and stable progress. So, I'll share with you some of the data that underpins that and hopefully kind of demonstrates the kind of mindset that I take on now in the training process, and actually feels quite feel a lot more positive, a lot more consistent. Feel like I'm actually in control of the journey forwards. I think last week I spoke to you and I was looking at progressing up to 95 kilos. So this is where I'm currently at now. So yeah, this week, so on Friday of session last week, I hit the 0.66 threshold. And then so Monday and Wednesday this week I've been doing 95. So what you'll see there is there's probably a steep drop off, and actually probably the two consecutive sets, certainly the two slowest sets I've done to start this block of training, and certainly the most pronounced drop off in velocity from a 5 kilo increase. All the increases have always been 5 kilos. And as a percentage, therefore, it should be getting slightly smaller with each increasing load. So 5 kilos of 70 kilos is obviously a larger percentage change than 5 kilos at 90. But yet, this demonstrates, whilst we like to think there's a very linear, straight line relationship between load and velocity, it probably isn't as perfectly straight as we might think. And this week I really have seen that. So I think I've done in two sets of 20, that's 40 repetitions. One repetition in 40 that's been above 0.6 meters per second. And by the end of the sets, into 0.3s, the high 0.3s, which I hadn't been at all at 90. So it's been a big drop off. But between the first and the second session, I've seen a small increase, not a massive increase, but a small increase. And in that second session is where I hit the 0.64 meters per second repetition. So that gives me just a little bit of kind of indication. Just in two sessions, I've seen a little bit of an improvement. And the reason why I kind of mentioned a few seconds ago is if I just kind of bring this slightly larger again. It follows the trend. It's not unexpected. The magnitude of decline is slightly more than I anticipated. But I kind of, this is what's going to happen. You go up a load, the velocity drops, and you grind your way back up to that target velocity. And that demonstrates physiological change, biomechanical change. You've gotten better, you've gotten stronger, as opposed to, yes, I've done all the repetitions, and if I'd have put another weight on there, I think, well, let's be honest, that was hard. Well, the velocity wouldn't say it's in my kind of strength range at the 0. Most of the repetitions are above 0.5, and that would say that is traditionally accepted as being the upper level of a strength load. That was hard. That was definitely very hard, and kind of RPE 9 and above, definitely. So I don't think I would have done more weight, even though the data says maybe, in hindsight, you probably could have done. But at the time, it felt like it was an RPE of maybe had a slight amount of more weight, but not a 5 kilo increase, definitely not. So that's the velocity. It's good news. Like I say, it's good news, but a slight kind of shock in terms of how much velocity dropped off just by having a 5 kilo increase. And it wasn't even like it was the end of the set that kind of dropped off mostly. It was the beginning of the set dropped off quite markedly, like hitting the 0.5s at the beginning of the set, whereas that's like a 0.2 meter per second drop off per repetition. So I was like in the 0.7 range for the first 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 reps. So what I've then had a look at doing is how does that influence power production? That's one of the great things about having the output as a device. I can go back and pull out lots of different metrics, lots of different ways of looking at things. So I can see this kind of cyclical pattern. You kind of go up in weight, the velocity drops off, you kind of grind your way back up again. What's happened to me over time, because you don't necessarily see that as a linear change. So this is what I looked at with power production. And we still see the kind of up and down, kind of mountain peak approach, but you can see there's a very clear trend of increasing power production. Now, because the velocity has dropped off quite markedly, dropped off greater than the percentage change in load, we can see here there's a definite drop off in power. So it might be that my optimal power production at the minute is at 90 kilos. But that's why I had a training program. So hopefully over the next, I'll probably take me 3 weeks, I reckon, based on the drop off now. So in my mind, you know, I've got 3 weeks at 95 kilos to try and get that power output above and beyond the previous one. So if I was hitting 95 at 0.66 meters per second, I'd probably wait into the kind of 650 watt average watts for that. So again, I can see evidence of progress. I can see evidence of development. I can see the fluctuations in between days. I can see the impact of kind of what happens when I change load. But you can see there's a very clear trend of increasing power production. And you can layer those two over the top of each other, and you can see there where the load goes up, velocity drops down, power then drops down, but then it kind of climbs back up again. But it doesn't kind of hit the lower levels as it did in the previous load, with the one exception. But even then, if you look back, I haven't dropped down below the power production for 85 kilos. I'm still above the power I was producing when I was at 85. So even at my slowest, I'm still more powerful than I was at 85 kilos. So again, evidence of development. I suppose, pardon the pun, the elephant in the room then is what's happening to me physically wise and from a body composition point of view, because I keep banging about that and trying to make some changes. Well, I did make some pretty good changes, being relatively consistent then on. So this is what the data says. So I've kind of, yeah, showed a little bit of drop down, stabilised, seeing a little bit of leg mass growth, maybe kind of 1-2 centimetres. It does vary. I had a bit of a blip last week, so I'm not sure. That must have been a measurement error. But maybe 1 or 2 centimetres growth on leg girth. And generally speaking, the hip and waist measurements are coming down. But body mass is staying roughly levelled off now, so not something that I want to maintain. But I'm kind of still playing around with intermittent fasting, time restricted eating. That's getting better, more consistent at that. But I think I probably then, within those eating windows, give myself a little bit of free room. But I kind of mentioned this on some of the podcasts I've been on lately. You can't change everything consistently all of the time. You've got to fight a battle at a time and then move on to the next one. So I think once I get more stable at intermittent fasting, more days, so let's say make sure I don't have too many off days, and then I can start to kind of refine what I'm doing within those windows. And the other part about it as well is, as you start to become a bit more physically active, moving a bit more weight, I kind of on the watt bike covering a little bit more distance, it's kind of driving hunger a bit, but not. I'm probably eating. That's driving eating more than I kind of so I'm overcompensating when I'm eating because of the hunger I've created, rather than sticking to what I've planned to eat. A few moments of lapses there, but as you can see, it's not really detrimental. It's just not driving positive change as much as I want to. But ultimately, again, I've got to chase the right things at the right time. So if I keep stable and increasing output and getting fitter and getting stronger, that was my primary goal. And if I keep that stable, this should eventually, over time, start to head in the right direction too. So generally speaking, positive. As always, some things will be better, some things will be a little bit worse, but generally speaking, the outlook is positive. So I'm kind of anticipating 3 weeks at 95 kilos based on that drop off. So we'll see if that kind of pans out. That'll be 9 sessions. That kind of is kind of the last time I had a significant drop off. It took me 9 sessions to get back up to the velocity ranges again. Well, check back next week to see if that's going as well or as slowly as planned.